I was sitting in the law office waiting room, nervously twitching my fingernails. This was my first opportunity to work full-time after graduating from college with a certificate in administration from the nearby community college. I came here because of my friend Claire's recommendation, which I appreciated even if I still think about her parting words. Remember to maintain an open mind, though. You'll adore this work, I'm sure. I couldn't understand the idea. I was only interviewing for a job in office administration, after all. However, I brushed it off as well-meaning, if somewhat confusing, advice, and turned my attention to my surroundings. There was an aura of refinement about the waiting room. The room was furnished with luxurious dark brown leather chairs, sophisticated glass tables, and immaculate tile flooring. The secretary greeted guests behind a large desk, and a captivating waterfall sculpture on the wall behind her poured into a peaceful pond below, where goldfish and koi swam smoothly. I couldn't help but experience a wave of excitement mixed with trepidation as I thought about the office's luxury. This job meant everything to me. "Madison?" the secretary called, snapping me out of my thoughts. "Mr. Lawrence will see you now." Expressing gratitude to the secretary, I rose from my seat, smoothing my pencil skirt to ensure it maintained its immaculate appearance. She led me down a corridor, knocking on the door before ushering me into the room. My initial impression was one of awe. The office was breathtaking, with a vast window offering a commanding view of the city. Tall bookshelves adorned one side, while the other boasted comfortable love seats, chairs, a small minibar, and a large TV screen seamlessly integrated into the wall. Mr. Lawrence stood behind his expansive desk, framed by the panoramic vista. "Miss Patterson, thank you for coming." "Welcome," Mr. Lawrence greeted, extending his hand. I shook it, noting the firm yet gentle grip that immediately set me at ease. Mr. Lawrence appeared to be in his late 40s, exuding an air of attractiveness with his salt and pepper hair and captivating eyes. His smile revealed the most enticing dimples I had ever seen on a man. "Thank you for seeing me," I replied, taking the seat in front of his desk. "Of course, Miss Patterson. You come highly recommended by Miss Verona. How do you know her?" "Yes, Claire is actually my soccer coach at school. She's not just a great coach, but also one of my closest friends even after graduation. I believe she used to work here." "That's correct." "Claire was an excellent employee. We'll miss her, but life moves on, especially with a little one on the way," Mr. Lawrence remarked, confirming my understanding. As I lacked professional experience to discuss, Mr. Lawrence delved into personal inquiries, asking about my marital status, which elicited a laugh and a no, relationship status, another no, and my overall health, thankfully a yes. He also inquired about my methods for maintaining happiness and physical fitness, to which I mentioned yoga and swimming. "Well, Miss Patterson, I must say I'm impressed so far. You seem like a great fit for our team here. However, I must ask, did Miss Collins provide you with a clear understanding of the responsibilities associated with this position?" "In all honesty, Mr. Lawrence, not quite. She mentioned it was an administrative role where I'd pitch in wherever needed," I confessed. He smiled knowingly. "I have no doubt about your qualifications, Miss Patterson, but I suspect this job might hold some surprises for you." I found myself at a loss for words, so I managed a hesitant, "Oh," and awaited his explanation. "We here at Carter & Blake Law pride ourselves on being the most prestigious firm in Albany. Our focus lies primarily on handling delicate cases for high-profile clients," he declared, emphasizing the firm's esteemed reputation. Having already been aware of the firm's standing, I listened intently as he elaborated. "Our attorneys endure significant stress levels, often working long hours under immense pressure," he continued, leaving me curious as to where this conversation was headed. "Your role is to aid these individuals in unwinding, using whatever means necessary to ensure their productivity and focus remain intact. While we label the position as administrative, it encompasses much more," he explained. I see," I responded slowly, beginning to grasp the gravity of the situation. Claire's advice to keep an open mind suddenly made sense. "So, am I correct in assuming this goes beyond fetching coffee and arranging travel?" He chuckled softly. "Indeed, Miss Patterson, there's far more to it," he confirmed, and in that moment I comprehended the depth of his expectations. Meeting my gaze squarely, he pressed on. Miss Verona suggested you possess not only an open mind, but also the suitability for the demands of this role. Was she mistaken in her assessment? My thoughts swiftly drifted back to a candid conversation that unfolded one evening in a local bar. Encountering Claire by chance, we retreated to a booth and perhaps indulged in a few too many shots. It was during that revelry that Claire revealed she was pregnant, accompanied by a slightly tipsy laugh as she shared the amusing uncertainty surrounding the father, given the events of a particularly eventful night involving 6 suitors. The revelation stunned me. I had never witnessed such candor from Claire. Yet, fueled by the liberating effects of alcohol, I found myself reciprocating with tales of my own adventurous exploits, both with men and women. I vividly recalled raising a toast to the spirit of easy girls everywhere. His final inquiry shook me to my core. In a sudden jolt of realization, I connected the dots. This was the very job Claire had held before her departure. I knew she had cherished this position, and when she disclosed her salary, I wasn't surprised. Now, armed with the true nature of the role, I found myself even less taken aback. As Mr. Lawrence patiently awaited my response, a whirlwind of thoughts stormed through my mind. Foremost among them was the fear of what my parents and friends would think if they ever discovered the nature of this job. Yet, amidst that apprehension, I recognized myself as a grown, albeit inexperienced woman now, and this position held a peculiar allure for several reasons. The promise of autonomy, a flexible schedule, the freedom to decline tasks at will, and the assurance of dealing with clean and healthy individuals. Moreover, the mere contemplation of accepting this role stirred a sensual response within me. I could feel myself growing aroused at the prospect. Observing Mr. Lawrence's patient demeanor, radiating warmth and openness, I found myself inexplicably at ease and comfortable in his presence. The realization that he would be my superior solidified my decision. "All right, so I assume you are extending the job offer to me?" I ventured. "Indeed I am, Miss Patterson," he confirmed with a smile, reaching into one of the desk drawers and retrieving a stack of papers, which he handed to me. As I perused the documents, grappling with the dense legalese, I found solace in the sections I could comprehend. With each paragraph, I grew increasingly confident in my ability to navigate this role. It became clear that I would wield control over my duties, further cementing my conviction that I was making the right choice. Mr. Lawrence's grin widened as he rose from his chair, extending his hand towards me. "Welcome aboard, Miss Patterson. Would you like to see your office?" Unable to contain my excitement, I let out a delighted squeal and eagerly trailed after him down the corridor. Glancing around, I caught fleeting glimpses into the offices of various lawyers, noting that they were all men, none older than 40, and exuding a sense of fitness and handsomeness. So far, my anticipation for starting this job was only growing. Our journey halted at a pristine white door, its silver handle contrasting starkly with the deep mahogany doors adorning the building. Mr. Lawrence unlocked it and handed me the key before leading the way inside. My breath caught in my throat as I stepped into the room, my hand instinctively flying to cover my mouth. It was grander and more exquisite than my studio apartment could ever dream of being. In one corner, a wooden desk sat majestically in front of a large window, adorned with lush green plants. Across from it, a plush suede couch faced a TV seamlessly embedded into the wall. An overstuffed chair and love seat completed the seating arrangement, while a miniature bar nestled in one corner next to a credenza. A large mirror hung behind it, adding to the room's sense of spaciousness. A short hallway branched off into a cozy bedroom, dominated by a king-size bed, draped in luxurious linens and surrounded by plump pillows. 2 expansive windows offered a serene view of the nearby park. Further along, the hallway led to a lavishly appointed bathroom, boasting a European walk-in shower. Underneath the sink lay a stack of fluffy towels and delicately scented bath products. My heart swelled with giddiness as I basked in the opulence of my new surroundings. Shrugging off my suit jacket, I tossed it onto the couch and twirled joyfully in the center of the room. Yes, this is absolutely wonderful. I couldn't be happier here. As I approached him to shake his hand, I noticed his gaze drifting downward, lingering on my chest. It dawned on me that the low-cut blouse, now devoid of the jacket's coverage, provided him with a rather generous view of my décolletage. The whirlwind of events had left me feeling oddly aroused, and I couldn't help but wonder if he too was feeling the weight of stress. With a sudden surge of confidence, I turned away from him and began to unbutton my blouse. Slipping the blouse from my shoulders, I tossed it carelessly over the couch, Wakotswara alongside my jacket. Turning back to face him, I endeavored to summon my most seductive expression. I hoped that my form-fitting pencil skirt, elevated heels, and now only thinly veiled breasts adorned in a delicate bra would shift his expression from surprise to desire. Their encounter on the sofa was intense, each moment steeped in unspoken desire. Eventually, I quietly rose and made my way to the washroom, returning with a damp washcloth. Gently, I tended to us both, Mr. Lawrence reassembling his attire, while I slipped back into my blouse. As he approached the door, Mr. Lawrence's tone shifted back to one of professional decorum. "Well, Miss Patterson," he remarked, extending his hand once more, "I believe you'll fit in quite well here." With a wink, he departed, leaving me alone in the office. Shutting the door behind him, I collapsed onto the couch, my mind swirling with a tumult of emotions encapsulated in just 2 words. Oh my. I called Claire that night and happily told her that I had decided to take her previous job. But she cut me off with a strong, "No, don't tell me now," before I could get into the specifics. Rather, she set us up at the same pub where our open discussion had started this whole adventure. It would be an understatement to say that the subsequent chat was eventful. Not only did I describe the specifics of my interview, but I also related how my first meeting with Mr. Lawrence had resulted in unanticipated intimacy, all while sitting in the comfortable booth that had become our official confessional. Claire listened carefully, paying close attention to everything I said. She was especially struck by my audacity with Mr. Lawrence. She quickly reminded me, though, that his alleged reserve did not represent the man she knew, who had shared intimate moments with her several times. In exchange, Claire told me about her personal interactions with the lawyers, complimenting some on their perseverance and inventiveness, and warning me about others whose behavior verged on abuse. I committed their names to memory. One woman stood out among them, and Claire advised me to side with her if I had the opportunity. I was thankful for her advice and her first suggestion, and I was looking forward to my first full day of work. When I arrived the next morning, it was clear that news of Claire's replacement had gotten out. Shortly after I had settled in, there was a knock on the white door of my office. One of the attorneys from the firm, Nolan, gave me a cordial welcome and even gave me a bouquet of flowers. I had met roughly half of the firm's 20 attorneys by the conclusion of my first week. Those who had the opportunity to use my services during that first week were lucky, since the next week was when my period started. Jamie was one of them, and I figured he was a nickname for Jay Matina, the only female lawyer there. I didn't meet Alex Carter until over a month into my job at the company. He was noticeably younger than the other 5 senior partners, yet at 35, he stood out as one of them. Alex was the firm's go-to lawyer for complicated or delicate situations because he was tall, about 6'2", and exuded confidence and good looks. I was surprised by Alex's sincere interest in me as a person when he initially knocked on my door. As our professional ties developed, a few of the other attorneys had demonstrated a semblance of personal connection, but none had demonstrated the degree of rapport I experienced with Alex. I would have easily agreed if he had just asked, but Alex took a more sexy tack and invited me to dinner instead. I was taken aback by the offer and decided to ask Claire for her opinion on this mysterious individual, but we didn't learn anything from our meeting at the confessional. She had worked for the firm while Alex was overseas, and their brief meeting had not made a lasting effect. In negotiating this fascinating new phenomenon, I felt like I was alone. After Alex took me to Harbor Grill for dinner, we sat on the balcony and enjoyed the stunning view of the Hudson River as the sun set. We spent a few hours getting to know one another better while enjoying the delicious meal and wine he had chosen. The night didn't finish there, of course. He gradually undressed me back at his place, exposing more of my exposed skin with each layer, until I was standing in front of him, wearing just my gold bracelet and pearl necklace. He continued to wear his immaculately fitted suit, which only served to heighten the moment's appeal. Our first kiss kindled a spark that electrified every part of me, making me crave his touch in every manner as his hug engulfed me. With the delicate tones of music he had carefully selected and the shimmering candles, we made love in the coziness of his bed. As our hands traced the curves of one another's nude bodies, it was an absolutely magical moment. I hoped that the softness of my curves would comfort him, but I was also enthralled with the sight of his sculpted muscles and the roughness of his skin. I gave myself over to a man that night who had evoked feelings in me so intensely that I began to doubt their sincerity. One word stuck in my head among the flurry of feelings, resonating with both doubt and promise: love. Alex dropped me off at my apartment the following morning. I really needed a hot shower and new clothing, and Madison was a complete mess. When I eventually arrived at work, I dismissed their demands and flopped down on the enormous king-size bed because I was already running late. I fell asleep quickly, but I kept seeing Alex and myself in my dreams. All I could think about was him, and I started to have doubts about my work. After that memorable first date, Alex kept asking me out on a regular basis. I tried to justify my work and keep up my relationships with the other attorneys, but I couldn't get rid of the sense that something inside of me had changed. Even though I continued to experience the joys of love, including the occasional tryst with Jamie, my feelings for Alex were far more intense than those for Jamie. We seemed to have a connection with him that went beyond the physical realm, and by the time we went on our fourth date, I was certain that I was deeply in love with him. One night, I told Alex how I felt, and it started a series of events that would change my life forever. I had known from the beginning that working for the company was only a short-term distraction, a lucrative diversion into a sexual fantasy. However, I became tired of the charade as time passed. Alex was incredibly empathetic when I finally plucked up the nerve to tell him how unhappy I was, telling me that his affections for me went well beyond the bedroom. After 3 months, Alex came to me with 2 important disclosures. The first was that he had found me another employment, which in retrospect seems less important. One of his clients, who owed him a significant favor, was keen to have me work for him as a buyer. I couldn't contain my excitement at Alex's second disclosure. He declared his love for me and made a marriage proposal, but with some restrictions. I was so ecstatic that I said, yes, before I had ever heard the words he had used. But after he clarified, I couldn't help but hesitate for a second. Both of us would be free to pursue other romantic interests in an open marriage, as Alex had envisioned. He made it clear that he disliked adultery and that he wanted our relationship to be built on openness and honesty. Although it was a radical break from the conventional idea of marriage, Alex's views on commitment, children, and family had been greatly impacted by his upbringing in a dysfunctional household. He was absolutely against having children of his own. For a while, I struggled with this idea. Like most girls, I had never set specific objectives for myself, but I had always believed that parenthood would play some role in my destiny. I'd have to give up that dream to be with Alex. Was I really ready to give up this much? Ultimately, love prevailed. The vacuum left by foregoing biological children might be filled, I thought, by adoption or other options. The idea of living my entire life with the man I loved was more important than everything else. I gave my resignation to Thomas and Thomas a few weeks later, saving my last day for Jamie. In addition to engaging in physical closeness, we had profound conversations for several hours while we were naked. She was completely aware of my reasons for leaving, and she told me that she, too, had feelings for Alex, but she wasn't sure which way her wants would ultimately lead. Her honest revelation made us both chuckle, and I made a light-hearted suggestion that she apply for my soon-to-be open post. We continued to laugh as we thought about it. In a private ceremony that was largely attended by my family, Alex and I exchanged vows. We decided not to invite anyone from Carter and Blake, and Madison Patterson became Madison Logan after our union. We started our lives together after moving into our condo on the 12th floor, which had a lovely view of the Hudson River. I quickly threw myself into my new work as a buyer, studying the nuances of buying materials and finished apparel. Despite having decades of experience in the field, my mentor Adam found it difficult to adjust to the quickly shifting scene as retirement approached. While Adam stuck to his old relationships with known suppliers, I was left to navigate this shifting environment as new competitors emerged from South America and Asia. It was clear that our story would not finish in a straightforward happily ever after. Adam and everyone else had no idea that I was getting invaluable tutoring in the background. Alex, who was skilled at negotiating, became my mentor and shared his knowledge on how to do deals. He underlined the necessity of asking insightful questions and interpreting the relevance of the responses in order to obtain more knowledge than our rivals. I made it a practice to share with him what I had discovered every day, and he would respond with perceptive follow-up questions that frequently illuminated important nuances I had missed. As our conversations went on, I became more skilled at revealing details about the company that our suppliers wished to stay under wraps. The turning point came when Adam and I couldn't agree on an important contract choice. With the information Alex had assisted me in gaining, I made my case during our debate in the president's office. There was a clear difference between Adam's weak plea based on supplier loyalty and my well-founded case. I brashly declared that being loyal shouldn't mean being exploited. Adam was surprised, but the president recognized the value in my viewpoint. Adam agreed to retire early a few weeks later, which pushed me into the position of director of purchasing. I was aware that Alex had already exercised the option of an open marriage because he told me about it right away. To my surprise, I didn't experience any of the jealousy I had expected. Alex's transparency and candor had been crucial. I made it my goal to make sure that my performance in bed never faltered, and our private moments remained as intense and satisfying as ever. The easy girl inside of me was sparked, and I happily satiated all of Alex's requests, making sure he got nothing but my best love. Both Alex and I experienced major changes in the upcoming year. When Alex was 40 years old, he accepted an incredible offer from a prominent Wall Street legal firm to become a senior partner. We chose to buy a beautiful house in Greenwich, Connecticut, since New York City was too far away for a daily commute. I had to quit my job, but one of the biggest apparel companies in the nation soon noticed my reputation in the fiber and fabric industry. There was a catch, even if their name would be readily known. The business was headquartered in Chicago. Despite the obvious obstacle of relocation on my behalf, they encouraged me to fly out for an interview after I described our circumstances to them over the phone. I didn't feel particularly anxious going into the interview, since I thought that my lack of experience and refusal to move would make me unworthy of a senior role. But I quickly learned the real reason they were interested in me. The business has polled industry suppliers and used undercover operatives to find out which American suppliers they were most afraid to negotiate with. I was surprised to see that my name had come up often in these conversations, making me seem like a kind of phenomenon in the field. I was asked a lot of questions regarding the complex relationships between participants and the state of the industry throughout the interview. The interviewers looked surprised by a few of my answers, and they asked me where I got my insights. I observed the interview panel members' modest gaze exchanges as I went into detail about the trail of clues that led me to each decision. I was unable to determine at the time if these interactions expressed skepticism or approval. Luckily, nobody inquired about my time at Carter & Blake. The day after I got back to Greenwich, I got a surprise call. The business offered a six-figure compensation for the position of vice president of buying. In addition, I wouldn't have to move because I would have an assistant to manage operations in Chicago. Since the position would require a lot of travel, they agreed to let me work remotely as long as I made sure to check in on a regular basis. I was ecstatic when Alex offered his steadfast support. The idea that a girl from Albany who had just earned a degree from a community college could be given such an incredible chance seemed unreal. Alex gave me a celebratory dinner that night, and we savored each other's company until the wee hours of the morning, reveling in the moment's bliss. I threw myself into my new work with enthusiasm, wanting to teach my team the abilities that had initially landed me the job. I volunteered to conduct training sessions, stressing the value of posing insightful queries, analyzing answers, and identifying subtleties that are not often expressed. It became clear that the group had been operating without adequate direction, and when they realized what they had been missing, their morale increased. I envisioned my team as lions, ready to preserve their newfound power, rather than reverting to lambs, and I hoped that this newfound energy would last. It was quite the adjustment to move from the small town of Albany to the busy metropolis of New York City. Even though Albany was the capital of the state, the city at the mouth of the Hudson was far more energetic than Albany. Alex was navigating rarefied air in the meantime, getting attention from attractive ladies, and being sought after by powerful clients for his legal advice. On a journey from Dallas to Los Angeles, I had the chance to test out my newly developed abilities. I was sitting in first class by the window, and I started talking to a man who seemed friendly enough. However, as our conversation progressed, I saw a faint pattern in his asking style that was deftly buried in the light-hearted banter. Some questions were unanswered, conveyed by noteworthy pauses or raised eyebrows, so I had to fill them in. I realized that I was speaking with an expert in the field I had been practicing. He was forced to sheepishly admit that he had been caught in the act when I questioned him about his strategies. We learned that we would both be staying in Los Angeles, but in separate hotels that were conveniently situated less than a quarter of a mile away. Therefore, we decided to get together for dinner and see where the evening would take us. The man looked a lot like Alex, but he was a little shorter, and his fascinating hazel eyes seemed to look right into my soul. He demonstrated a tremendous breadth of knowledge on a wide range of issues throughout our dinner talk. In contrast to me, he had a wealth of travel experience and seemed very comfortable in a variety of cultural contexts. He disclosed that he was in Los Angeles for talks about a possible acquisition and that he was a key figure in business development for a major American corporation. A multitude of tales, each tinged with pearls of wisdom and given with a welcome dose of modest humor, were conveyed by his rich baritone voice. I was struck by how grounded he was and how confident he was, qualities I had rarely seen so openly and honestly. I was completely captivated by the soft yet unflinching sincerity with which he expressed his admiration and attraction for me. He grabbed for my hand at supper as the evening wore on, and I did not try to yank him away. We were sitting close to one another in the comfortable lounge when his hand landed on my leg, which I immediately accepted. I reflexively pulled him closer as the alcohol took effect, gradually distorting my perception as he moved in to kiss me. By then, we both realized where our evening together was certain to go. It was only fitting that we use the adjacent elevator to get to my room after eating at the restaurant in my hotel. We embraced once we were inside, and I savored the feel of his lips, his touch, and the heady aroma of his skin. I hadn't shared intimate feelings with anybody but Alex in 3 years, and my long-suppressed yearning awoke. We relished the anticipation, examining each other's nude bodies with gentle curiosity as we shed each piece of clothing. His jacket first, then mine, his shirt, my top, our shoes, and my bra. His deft touch and gentle kisses raised my desire as we moved to the bed, alert to the tiny clues that indicated the ideal timing. We made love, engrossed in the beauty of the moment, in a symphony of passion and compassion. We then exchanged phone numbers, and he promised to get in touch, raising the prospect that we would cross paths once more. We kissed one more time before he left for his hotel, and I said I hoped for such a reunion. I called Alex right away, regardless of the early hour in Los Angeles. As he responded, I excitedly described every aspect of my most recent adventure, feeling his joy across the phone as he inquired and said he was excited about my possible return. My pulse fluttering with anticipation, I hung up with the promise of a wonderful welcome home gift. I missed that moment so much. Because we both had to travel for work, the night in Los Angeles turned into a covert 4-year relationship. We were able to plan meetings in the same places for quick bursts of passion, since we were so accustomed to sharing our calendars. We were occasionally fortunate enough to spend entire weeks together on visits to Southeast Asia, or to be taken to far-flung places like Vermont and Guatemala in his company's private plane. Those flights were a monument to luxury, taking first-class travel's glitz to the next level. The two of them met twice during those years. The first meeting happened during lunch at the World Trade Center's famed Skyline Heights restaurant. They greeted each other, and I was filled with pride as I saw the friendship between the two guys I loved. He was staying at the Grand Royale Hotel when the second meeting took place. Alex generously offered me a ride after some fortunate car difficulties, and his final comments echoed the unending faith and love he showed me. It was an instant that captured what I loved about him. As our relationship developed, we had less and fewer occasions to meet, and I longed to take advantage of the additional sexual freedoms Alex had generously given me. Despite our respective forays into other relationships, our bond persisted because of our shared memories and enduring desire. And as luck would have it, our paths crossed again, reigniting an old passion. I was surprised to see an opulent invitation on the dashboard of my car one cold morning as I was getting ready to go to the garment area. It caught my attention since it was made from exquisite linen paper with my name, Madison Logan, plated in gold leaf. It contained the Artemis Society seal, which told me to deliver it to a location in the Upper East Side the next afternoon. I asked Alex for an explanation, assuming he was responsible. Alex surprised me by admitting he didn't know, which added to the mystique of the mysterious invitation. We discussed its importance, and because we were both curious, we agreed that he would go with me, which allayed my fears about going alone. When we got to the West 57th address the following day, a stern-looking man behind a desk pushed us into a reception room. He looked more like a security guard than a receptionist, but I gave him the invitation, and after a quick phone call, he motioned for us to sit down. Shortly after, a tall man appeared from a door that had a beautifully carved Viking ship on it. He introduced himself as Marcus, and, although briefly perplexed by Alex's arrival, quickly regained his composure and took us into his office. The office itself was quite magnificent, with fittingly opulent decor. After we took our seats in the chairs facing his large desk, Marcus took a black folio out of a drawer and started organizing papers. Speaking to both of us, he said, "I'm surprised, though perhaps I shouldn't be. The invitation was intended for Mrs. Logan alone. However, since she's brought you along, I assume that what I propose to offer her will require your approval. I'll deviate from our usual protocol and include you in the discussion. It's better this way, to hear it firsthand." He then showed us non-disclosure agreements, which Alex was accustomed to seeing because he was a lawyer. Alex nodded his satisfaction and signed the forms after carefully reading them, and I did the same. After gathering the signed documents and tucking them into the black folder, Marcus started talking. Since people who are familiar with the Artemis Society are probably aware of its complexities, I won't go into every aspect of Marcus's explanation. I have to confess, though, that the Iron Rule was very unexpected. Although I understood that the club was a private sanctuary for unbridled love, the requirement that women be fully naked within its walls shocked me. Except for the one time Alex convinced me to take off my bra and walk topless along a crowded Long Island beach, I had never considered myself an exhibitionist. The Artemis Society's demand was a very different matter, and as Marcus explained it, I could feel a flush rising up my cheeks. After Marcus finished his explanation, he leaned back in his chair and waited for our answer. The stillness was broken first by me. "Does Alex be invited as well if I accept?" Marcus explained that although the screening procedure had been finished for me, Alex would require a comparable assessment in order to be included. The result was yet unknown. As we left his office, we decided that any interest we might have would depend on our acceptance as a group. We were willing to wait a year or two for Alex's background check, if necessary. To put it mildly, the chat we had on the way home was fascinating. Alex thought it was time for me to get some practice for future Artemis Society activities while we were on vacation in Belize. To create the scene, I had a few glasses of wine over lunch and was feeling very ecstatic when my cunning husband escorted me back to our room and took off my clothes entirely. Then, for decency, he gave me a sun hat and a simple blue cotton beach robe before leading me to the sea. We had arrived at the naturist section of the beach when I noticed a sign in multiple languages declaring that clothes were not required. As I passed a few nude beachgoers, I noticed that some of them were looking in our direction, but the majority were either reading, napping, or just looking at the horizon. Although it looked to be the exception rather than the rule, one couple did appear to be having more intimate affairs. Alex found a comfortable area, unfolded the surf chairs, and laid down our beach towels, then casually took off his shorts. I had to confront my moment of truth now. Alex looked expectantly at me as I responded, and I tossed the robe aside in a joking gesture. For a brief instant, my boldness paralyzed me. I almost expected everyone on the beach to turn toward me, but a cursory glance showed that there was no one there. I was left feeling both relieved and curiously disappointed. My fear of public display was based on an instinctive knowledge that the naked female body naturally attracts male attention. It appeared that being nude sent a message of availability, a primordial need to be wanted. Even though society had subdued this drive, I could still feel its effects. Alex's expression showed a tinge of enjoyment, as if he found some amusement in my discomfort. I gave him a teasing glare in return, then took a seat in one of the surf chairs. With renewed confidence, I complied with Alex's request for sunscreen, applying it much more delicately than he had. As Alex had predicted, my first discomfort subsided as a wave of relaxation swept over me. Two males passed by a little later, their grateful looks confirming my newfound comfort level with nudity. I suddenly realized that maybe this wasn't as intimidating as I had thought. By the second day, I was not only at ease with my nudity, but also actively embracing it for anyone who wanted to see. It appeared that I wasn't the only one going through this change. Alex seems to have lost his inhibitions as well. As passion ignited between us like wildfire, our nightly closeness reached new heights. I tested the limits of Alex's legendary fortitude, savoring each second of being loved and appreciated. An enormous feeling of contentment overcame any remaining worries about the Artemis Society's strict rules. After we got back to Connecticut, Alex worked on high-profile cases while I took a number of long travels abroad. Alex's business has been flooded with cases defending stockbrokers facing federal indictments as a result of the SEC's crackdown on insider trading during the Reagan administration. The Artemis Society had actually drifted to the sidelines of our lives. I didn't finally learn Marcus DeLuca's last name until a year and a half later, when I got a call from him. He told me that Alex's membership had been accepted. The next week, we joined up without hesitation. Even after practicing in Belize, I still got butterflies in my stomach when I stood in front of the swan door. I was going to go through in my underwear. Alex insisted on a taste test before we left the house, and I was more than happy with it before we even got to the club. I took a big breath before pushing the door open, and Alex and the 6 other men's eyes met mine right away. Alex was accompanied by Liana, the hostess of the club. She was beautiful, but at first I didn't understand her race. She seemed more European, and I subsequently found out she was half French and half Senegalese. She greeted Alex and me with a handshake and a hearty welcome to the club. Apologizing to Marcus, who usually led tours for new members, Liana kindly offered to give us a tour, but he was not available at the time. Her mention of it made me think that he might have been absent because he was having sex, but it was easy to assume so in this bizarre environment. Luckily, our tour started at the bar, where I was able to calm my nerves with a cold Pinot Noir. The sight of so many other nude women and well-dressed guys had the desired psychological impact on me as I looked around. My nipples hardened at the notion of being in such an exotic, erotically charged environment, which I had never experienced before. I was astounded by the club's interior design, and everyone we encountered appeared friendly as we were introduced to the board, the restaurant, and the bar personnel. We met a kind, mixed-race woman named Priya at the board, who gave us an explanation of its function. Priya said that she was in charge of the activity suite keys. Kyrie offered to show us one of the keys after taking one herself. She led us to one of the doors on the second floor, which opened into what looked like a 5-star hotel room. A sumptuous king-sized bed encircled by chairs and love seats served as the focal point. Body oils and tissues were kept in the top drawer of a bedside table that had 3 drawers. Additionally, Liana showed how to turn on the suite's audio system, which played calming tunes around the room. I gave everything she showed us a nod of approval because I like listening to music in private. I felt like I needed another drink because it was nearly too much to take in all at once. After guiding us back to the bar, Kyrie patiently addressed all of our inquiries. The fact that staff members were also sexually available to members with the knowledge that they may decline without providing an explanation astonished me. I saw an older woman and a considerably younger male staff member enter one of the activity suites during our tour. When I brought this up to Kyrie, she laughed and clarified that the male staffers needed to be physically fit to satisfy the demand from some female members who desired younger companions. I gave Alex a cheeky look and asked him if he would be interested in a job. Kyrie revealed that she was contentedly married to a man who valued her independence and even encouraged her to work at the club. She said that if we ever happened to be at the club together again, she would introduce us to him. She thanked her for the educational orientation and went back to her station beside the door. Alex inquired, "What do you want to do now?" as he turned to face me with eager eyes. "I think we'll enjoy everything Liana showed us and more," I said, looking him in the eye. "But please grab one of those keys, take me upstairs, turn on the music, and show me love to celebrate our first night here. Have I expressed how much I love my husband's cheeky smile?" Our subsequent visit included our first wife swap and a meeting with Adam and Martha. The high point of the evening was when Adam and I made passionate love on the king-sized bed as Alex and Martha played together on a love seat. We made the decision to repeat our encounter with Adam and Martha when Liana eventually introduced us to her husband, Paul. However, Liana and I had some intimate moments as a warm-up, which made our partners more aroused. I found that it was a great pleasure for Alex to see me fall in love with other guys, and then with other women. With fresh vitality, the freed spirit within me reappeared. Marcus frequently asked us during our interactions whether we knew of somebody who might be a good fit for membership. At first, we had no suggestions, but after some thought, I saw that the person from my 4-year affair was the ideal option. I got in touch with Marcus right away and heartily endorsed him. Alex added his effusive appreciation, echoing my feelings. When I looked over my messages a year and a half later, I came across one that surprised me. After returning from Paris, an old and close friend told me that he was the newest member of a club that he was positive I was aware of. He invited Alex and me to go with him. I eagerly looked around the house for Alex, and he was as enthusiastic as I was, which delighted me. I left a message at our friend's hotel confirming our meeting for the next night after we canceled our earlier plans. I turned to Alex as we drove into the city and admitted that I needed him. Just for tonight, just with me. "I understand, Jen, I understand," my amazing husband said with a simple nod. God, I love that man so much.